I told everyone he hit me after a fight. His lawyer subpoenaed my deleted texts. Hello, Reddits, for the purpose of this story. Let's call my name Emily, and you all might just hate me after hearing this story. I used to think I had a good life. I was married to a man who never gave me a reason to doubt him. Ryan was my one true love, the kind of man you could build a future with. He worked hard, he loved our son, and he never let me go to bed without telling me he loved me. But somewhere along the way, that stopped feeling like enough. I don't even know when it started. Maybe it was the nights we spent sitting on opposite ends of the couch, both exhausted but never really together. Maybe it was the way I started looking at other couples, the ones who still had that fire, and wondered why ours had faded. Or maybe it was just me. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I was broken in some way I didn't want to admit. I told myself for the longest time that Ryan was the problem, that he had let things grow stale, that he had stopped trying. But the truth is, he didn't change. It was me that did. I started craving something I couldn't name, something that made my heart race again. I wanted to feel wanted, to feel like more than just a wife, more than just a mother. And everything just fell apart the moment I met Tyler. I hate even saying his name now. Tyler was charming in a way that Ryan never was. He had this effortless confidence, this way of making every interaction feel like something more. It started as nothing. We would just have casual conversation at work, playful teasing that made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. But then I started waiting for our interactions. I started dressing differently for work, started checking my phone more often, started feeling that rush every time I saw his name pop up on my screen. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just talking, but I wasn't just talking. Because the first time he touched my arm, my stomach flipped. And when he leaned in a little too close one night as we talked in the parking lot, I didn't pull away. And then came the very dangerous texts, the ones that weren't about work, the ones that lingered too long. I should have stopped. I knew I should have stopped, but I didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. It wasn't love. I see that now. It was never about Tyler. It was about me. About what I thought I was missing. About the thrill of doing something I wasn't supposed to do. It was about proving to myself that I was still desirable, still exciting, still more than just a wife stuck in a routine marriage. I convinced myself that I could have both. That I could keep my life with Ryan exactly the same while indulging in this secret that was just mine. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. They end up getting exposed in the worst way possible and end up just ruining your entire life. And before I even understood what I had set in motion, my entire world began to crumble around me. And I have no one to blame but myself. I don't know exactly when I started to let it happen. At first, Tyler was just another face at work, someone I barely noticed, someone I interacted with in passing. But the more I saw him, the more I started paying attention. He was different from Ryan, younger, full of confidence, carrying himself like the world bent to his will. He had this easy charm, this way of talking that made everything sound exciting. He flirted effortlessly, never crossing a line but always towing it, waiting to see if I'd step over. And I did. It started with the smallest things, a lingering glance, a comment that stayed with me long after he said it, the way he made me feel like I was someone interesting, someone wanted. I told myself it was harmless, that there was nothing wrong with a little attention, that it wasn't real. But then came the texts. They started off casual, just work-related at first, and then they weren't. I would catch myself smiling at my phone, waiting for a response. My heart would speed up when I saw his name pop up on my screen. I started keeping my phone closer, lowering the brightness at night when I was lying next to Ryan, knowing I was crossing a line but doing it anyway. One day, Tyler brushed his fingers against my arm when he passed me in the hallway, and I felt it everywhere. My skin burned where he touched me, and I knew I wasn't going to stop this. The first time we met outside of work, it was for coffee. It wasn't anything dramatic. I told myself that this was just a quick meeting, nothing inappropriate. But the moment I sat across from him, the air between us shifted. He looked at me in a way Ryan hadn't in years, and I liked it. That coffee turned into long drives where we just talked, where I let myself open up in ways I never had with Ryan anymore. And then, one night, After too many stolen moments, too many words left unsaid, we stopped pretending. I told Ryan I was going to dinner with friends. Instead, I checked into a hotel. When Tyler kissed me for the first time, I didn't think about my marriage, about my son, about the life I was throwing away. All I could think about was how alive I felt. I told myself it was just this once, just one time, just something to remind me that I was still me. But I went back, again and again. It became easier to lie, easier to make excuses, easier to tell myself that Ryan would never find out, that as long as I kept it separate, I could keep everything. But I was wrong. Ryan wasn't stupid. At first, he didn't say much, just little comments here and there, asking why I was on my phone so much, noticing when I came home later than usual. I got good at deflecting, laughing it off, making him feel like he was imagining things. But then, he started watching me more closely. He would glance over at my phone when I wasn't paying attention. His arm would tighten around me at night in a way that felt possessive, like he was trying to hold on to something he knew was slipping away, and I started resenting him for it. I told myself that if he had been different, if he had been more exciting, I wouldn't have needed this in the first place. I convinced myself that he was the problem. And then one night I slipped up. I had been careless, too comfortable, too sure of myself. I had met Tyler earlier that evening, and when I got home, I was still buzzing from it, heart racing, skin still humming with the remnants of his touch. Ryan was already in bed when I walked in. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that usually made me feel safe. But that night, something felt off. I went into the bathroom to take a shower, and when I came out, Ryan was sitting up, his phone in his hands. My phone? My stomach dropped. I froze in the doorway, heart hammering, every single excuse I could possibly think of flashing through my mind all at once. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the screen. Then finally he looked up at me, and I knew. I knew I couldn't lie my way out of this, but I tried anyway. I laughed, acted confused, and asked him why he was going through my phone. I accused him of being paranoid, of not trusting me. I turned the entire thing around on him, twisting it until he was the one who felt guilty for doubting me. Gaslighting. That's what it was. I see that now, but in the moment, it felt like survival. He wasn't buying it. He asked me straight out if I was cheating. I denied it again, even with the evidence right there. Even as he showed me the messages I thought I had deleted. Even as his voice broke, as his hands shook. I still lied. I watched his face change, watched something inside him crack. And then I said it. I don't know why I did. Maybe because I knew I was losing control. Maybe because I was desperate to shut him down, to make him stop looking at me like that. But I told him that if he hadn't been so bored, if he had actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to look somewhere else. The words hung between us, heavy and irreversible. I saw the exact moment something inside him broke. He didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't throw anything. He just looked at me like I was nothing. And that hurt more than if he had screamed. I wanted him to fight. I wanted him to prove me wrong, to tell me I was still worth fighting for. But instead, he stood up, walked past me, and left the room. The silence that followed was worse than any argument. I should have run after him, should have begged him to stay, should have told him the truth, told him that I never wanted to lose him. But I didn't. I just stood there, feeling my entire world begin to fall apart. And knowing that I had done this, I should have just let him walk away. I should have let the fight end there, let the silence settle, let the weight of what I had done finally sink in. But I didn't. Because when Ryan left that night, when I heard the front door close and the sound of his car starting in the driveway, something inside me twisted. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't a regret. It was rage. I had spent months lying, sneaking around, convincing myself that I wasn't really the villain of this story. But in that moment, as I stood alone in our house, surrounded by the ruins of my own making, I felt something even worse than guilt. I felt exposed. Ryan had seen me. He had seen what I was capable of, seen through every excuse, every lie. And instead of fighting for me, instead of staying and fixing it, he had left. And that made me furious. I refused to be the one left behind. What happened next wasn't something I planned. When my sister called the next morning, asking if everything was okay after hearing my voice crack when I answered, the words came out before I could stop them. I told her Ryan and I had a fight and that he got angry, that he shoved me. It wasn't a full lie, not at first, not exactly, because there had been a fight. He had been angry, and he had touched me. He had grabbed my wrist when I tried to take my phone back, but he hadn't hurt me. He hadn't hit me. He hadn't shoved me to the ground. He hadn't done anything other than stand there while I tore into him, while I accused him of being the reason I had cheated, while I threw words at him like knives meant to wound. But my sister's voice changed when she heard what I said. It became softer, more concerned. And suddenly I liked how that felt. It was easier. It made everything hurt less. Because if Ryan was the bad guy, then I wasn't. If Ryan was the one who had crossed a line, then I was justified in everything I had done. I wasn't a cheater. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't the woman who had betrayed a good man. I was a victim. It started slow. I didn't outright tell people he had hit me at first. I let them assume. I let the tears linger in my voice when they asked if I was okay. I let the pauses between my words drag out just long enough to make them think there was something I wasn't saying. And people filled in the blanks for me. My family turned against him first. My mother, who had always adored Ryan, became cold whenever she spoke about him. My sister, who once called him the perfect husband, stopped saying his name altogether. My friends rallied around me. They told me I deserved better, that I had done the right thing by leaving, that I was so brave for standing up for myself. Even Tyler stepped up, playing the part of the protective savior. He started spending more nights with me, holding me while I pretended to be shaken. He told me he had never liked Ryan anyway, that he always knew there was something off about him. And I let them believe it, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the villain. I was the one people felt sorry for. I was the one who got to cry and be held and be told that I deserved better. And I clung to that. Because the alternative, the truth, was unbearable. Ryan didn't try to fight me on it, He didn't even come storming back, demanding that I take back what I said. He didn't yell or beg or even defend himself. He just left. He packed his things quietly, moving with a kind of detachment that made my stomach twist. I watched him from the doorway as he folded his clothes into a suitcase. He was so calm, too calm, like something inside him had just switched off. I told myself that meant I had won, that I had control, that he believed I would take this as far as I needed to, and that it wasn't worth the fight. But before he left, he looked at me, really looked at me, and told me something that made my blood run cold. He told me I would regret this, not in a threatening way, not in anger, but in a way that sounded like a fact, like a promise. Then he walked out, and I stood there, staring at the space where he used to be, and told myself that I didn't care, that this was what I wanted, that I had won. For a while it worked. People checked in on me constantly, asking how I was holding up. Friends who had started drifting away from me before all this suddenly came back, offering support, reassuring me that I had done the right thing. I got sympathy, attention, validation, and Ryan, he stayed silent. He didn't try to defend himself, didn't correct the story, didn't tell people the truth. And that only made it easier to believe my own lie, because if he wasn't denying it, then maybe it was real. Maybe he really had been the bad guy all along. But then things started to shift. People weren't talking about Ryan anymore. They weren't checking in as often. The whispers around me weren't about him. They were about me. And then one night my sister called. Her voice was different this time, sharper, colder. She told me Ryan had lawyered up, that he was filing for divorce, that he was fighting for custody, that he had proof I was lying, that his lawyer had subpoenaed my deleted texts, the ones where I admitted to my best friend that Ryan had never touched me, that I had made it up because I was mad, because I didn't want to be the bad guy, The phone almost slipped from my hand, Everything inside me went still. For the first time since this started, real fear settled in my chest, Because suddenly, I wasn't in control anymore. Ryan wasn't silent anymore, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't playing my game. He was ending it. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I had been expecting it, some kind of divorce paperwork, something that would officially end what I had already destroyed. I told myself I was ready for it, that I had already won, that no matter how this played out, I had control. But when I opened the envelope and saw what was inside, the air left my lungs. Ryan wasn't just filing for divorce, he was fighting for full custody of our son. I read the words over and over, my hands shaking. It didn't make sense. He wasn't the type to go to war over things like this. I had told myself that no matter how angry he was, he would never try to take our son away from me. I called my sister immediately, my voice barely steady enough to speak. She already knew. And that's when she told me something that sent a chill down my spine. Ryan had proof. I hadn't thought much about the texts. The ones I had sent to my best friend, the ones where I had vented about the fight, the ones where I had admitted that Ryan never actually hit me, the ones where I had laughed about how easy it was to make people believe me. I had deleted them, convinced that meant they were gone forever. But Ryan's lawyer had subpoenaed my phone records, and now they were in his hands. The texts, the affair, and the truth. The evidence was stacked against me in a way I had never imagined possible, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The first time I saw Ryan in court, he didn't look at me. He sat across the room, composed, distant, his face unreadable. It wasn't hatred in his eyes when the judge called us forward. It was something worse. It was indifference, the kind that only comes from someone who has nothing left to say. I had convinced myself he would break before I did, that he would plead, that he would fight for us, that he would give in to the emotions I had always been able to twist in my favor. But he was calm, unshaken, ready, and I was the one falling apart. His lawyer spoke first, laying everything out methodically, unemotionally. The evidence of my affair, the dates and locations, the receipts from hotels I had thought no one would ever connect back to me. And then came the worst part, the texts. Every single message I had sent, pulled up on a screen for the court to see. The way I had bragged about fooling everyone, the way I had laughed about Ryan being too passive to fight back, the way I had admitted in my own words that I had lied about the abuse. It didn't matter what I said after that. It didn't matter if I cried, if I apologized, if I tried to justify any of it. Because I wasn't just a liar. I was caught. And I watched, helpless, as the judge's expression hardened with every new piece of evidence. When it was my turn to speak, I couldn't even find the words. I had walked into that courtroom believing I still had control, that no matter what Ryan had planned, I could talk my way out of it. But sitting there, under the weight of my own lies, I realized I had already lost. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was exactly what they were painting me to be, reckless, dishonest, unfit. The judge made her decision quickly, and Ryan was awarded primary custody. I was granted supervised visitation. Supervised. Like I was dangerous. Like I wasn't even capable of being alone with my own child. It was humiliating. I barely heard the rest of the ruling. Something about financial penalties. Something about legal fees I would be expected to pay. I sat there in stunned silence, barely able to process what was happening. Ryan didn't look at me once. Not when the judge finished speaking. Not when we were dismissed. Not when he walked past me, my entire world collapsing at my feet. He had said one thing to me that day. Just before we stepped into the courtroom, when we were standing in the hallway, waiting for everything to begin. He had looked me in the eyes, his face blank, his voice calm. And he had told me that he hoped this, all of this, had been worth it. Then he walked away. And for the first time since this had all started, I realized I wasn't winning. I had already lost. Update. Hi, Reddits. I didn't think it would actually happen. Not like this. I thought even after everything, I would still have some control. That even if Ryan was furious, even if he hated me, he wouldn't take it this far. I was wrong. I remember as I sat in the courtroom listening as the judge ruled in his favor, but the words didn't fully register at first. They felt distant, like they were happening to someone else. Primary custody, supervised visitation, unfit mother. The phrases floated around me, heavy and suffocating, but I couldn't grasp them. It wasn't until I saw Ryan stand up, calm and collected, that I realized what was happening. He was walking away from this with everything, and I was walking away with nothing. I barely remembered leaving the courthouse. The world outside felt different, harsher. The air stung against my skin. The sounds of the city felt too loud. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone to tell me this wasn't real, but no one answered. The first time I visited my son after the ruling, it wasn't at Home Dot. It was at a court-appointed center. A sterile, cold place with uncomfortable chairs and walls painted in muted colors, as if that would somehow soften the reality of what was happening. I sat there waiting, feeling the weight of everything I had done pressing down on me. I wasn't his mom anymore, not in the way that mattered. I was a visitor in his life now, someone who had to schedule time with him like a distant relative. And when he walked in, when he saw me sitting there, his expression wasn't exciting. He looked at me hesitantly. That broke me. I had always been the constant in his life, the one he ran to when he was scared, the one who kissed his scraped knees, the one who tucked him in at night. But now I was just a supervised visit. I smiled through the ache in my chest, tried to pretend like this was normal, but I could see the confusion in his little face. He didn't understand why things had changed. Why was his dad the one picking him up from school every day? Why he no longer lived in the house he had known his whole life? And I couldn't explain it to him, because how do you tell your child that his mother ruined everything? The sympathy dried up fast. When I had first told everyone Ryan had hurt me, they had rallied around me. Friends, family, even casual acquaintances reached out to offer their support. People told me how brave I was, how strong. Now they wouldn't even look me in the eye. The same people who had hugged me, who had reassured me I was doing the right thing, now whispered about me behind my back. I could feel it when I walked into a room, the shift in energy, the way conversations paused just long enough for me to notice before picking back up again. And the worst part? No one confronted me. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything. My mother was the first to pull away. She didn't disown me, didn't yell or scream, but the disappointment in her voice when we spoke was unbearable. She told me she didn't understand how I could have done this, how I could have lied like that, how I could have thrown away the life Ryan had given me. I tried to tell her it wasn't that simple, but she wasn't interested in excuses. My sister stopped returning my calls. My closest friends, the ones I had spent years confiding in, suddenly had no time for me. Even the people who didn't abandon me treated me differently, like I was fragile, like I was a mess they didn't know how to clean up. And maybe I was. I thought at least Tyler would be there. I thought that after everything, he would stand by me. I had given up my marriage for him, my family, my reputation. I had thrown away the life I had built for something I thought was real. But Tyler wasn't real. The night after the ruling, I went to his apartment. I needed comfort, needed something to ground me, to remind me that I hadn't lost everything. He took one look at my face, at the tears, at the exhaustion, and I saw it in his eyes. The shift, the hesitation, and then the words that shattered the last piece of me. Emily, I don't think I can do this anymore. I felt like I had been slapped. I asked him what he meant, already knowing the answer, already seeing the way he was pulling back, distancing himself, checking out. He said he hadn't signed up for this, that he hadn't expected things to get so messy, that he wasn't ready for a serious commitment. That was when I realized the truth. Tyler had never loved me. He loved the thrill, the secrecy, the excitement of sneaking around, of stolen moments, of being the guy I was willing to risk it all for. But now there was no more secrecy, no more excitement, just me, a broken woman whose life was in ruins. And he didn't want that. He didn't want me. He told me he needed space, but we both knew what that meant. I left his apartment without another word. And just like that, I was alone. The next morning, I woke up in an apartment that wasn't mine. The house I had once lived in, the one I had decorated, the one where I had built a life with Ryan, belonged to him now. I was renting a place half the size, barely able to afford the bills on my own. The bed was cold. The space beside me was empty. No Ryan, no Tyler, no friends, no family. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I was the one in control, that I had the power to shape my own story, to decide how things would turn out. But in the end, I had destroyed myself, and I had no one to blame but me. Guys, I thought I was winning. I thought I had everything under control. But I was wrong. I lost my husband. I lost my son. I lost the life I had taken for granted. And for what? A man who never loved me? A thrill that lasted only until reality hit? I don't know how to come back from this. I don't know if I ever will. Update. Hi, Reddit. it's me again, and this is going to be my last post here. I'm sure you guys don't want to listen to my rant anymore. It shows all over from your comments exactly what you guys think of me. Your words, painful as they may be, are true, and I cannot deny any of the insults and demeaning words. But then again, I cannot just stop writing, because there's no one else who will listen to me. I'm sad and alone, and I have no one, absolutely no one on my side. And then I saw Ryan's picture. The truth is that I wasn't expecting to see his picture. It wasn't like I was looking for him. I had already unfollowed him, blocked his accounts, and convinced myself that I didn't need to see what he was doing because of how painful it was seeing my family without me in it. But social media has a cruel way of reminding you of what you've lost. It was just another scroll through my feed, another meaningless distraction until I saw it. Ryan, smiling. It wasn't a posed smile. It wasn't the forced kind of happiness people put on for the world to see. It was real. He was at a restaurant, sitting at a table with a few friends who had once been our friends. His arm was draped casually over the back of a chair, his posture relaxed, his eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. And then I saw her. She wasn't leaning into him, wasn't making it obvious, but I knew. I could tell by the way she was looking at him, by the slight tilt of her body toward his, by the way he seemed lighter next to her. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The caption was something simple, something about a night out, but the comments told me everything I needed to know. You look great, man. So happy for you. Finally seeing you where you deserve to be. She's beautiful. You two make a great couple. I stared at those words until they blurred, until my vision felt like it was swimming. I didn't even realize I was crying until my phone screen became blurry, because that was it. That was the moment I truly understood. Ryan wasn't broken. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't sitting in some dark room mourning the loss of our marriage. He was relieved. He had escaped, and I was the one who had been left behind. After the court ruling, things unraveled faster than I could have ever imagined. I hadn't just lost Ryan. I had lost everything. The house I once thought I'd grow old in, gone. The friends who had once supported me, gone. Even my family kept me at a distance, the disappointment in their voices cutting deeper than any words ever could. I had to sell the house to cover legal fees. What little money I walked away with wasn't enough to maintain the life I had grown so comfortable with. The designer bags, the expensive jewelry, the weekend getaways, they were all illusions. Things I had surrounded myself with to feel important, to feel worthy. And now they were slipping through my fingers. The apartment I moved into was nothing like the home I had left behind. It was small, cramped, with thin walls that made it impossible to ignore the sound of my neighbors fighting, of their kids laughing, of lives that weren't mine. I furnished it with secondhand pieces, nothing matching, nothing mine. The walls were bare, the space hollow, a constant reminder that this was what I had reduced myself to. There were nights I couldn't sleep, nights where the silence was so unbearable that I would turn on the TV just to hear something. But no amount of background noise could drown out the thoughts in my head. The realization that I had done this to myself. The hardest part wasn't losing Ryan. It wasn't losing my home, my money, my reputation. It was losing my son. I saw him during my supervised visits, sitting across from me in a room that never felt warm enough, never felt right. He was polite, sweet as always, but there was something different in the way he looked at me now, something guarded. He didn't run into my arms the way he used to. He didn't chatter excitedly about his day, about school, about the silly little things that once made up our life together. He was careful, and it broke me. Ryan never spoke badly about me in front of him. I knew that. He wasn't that kind of man. But my son wasn't stupid. He had felt the shift. He knew that something between his parents had changed in a way that could never be undone. And no matter how much I smiled, no matter how much I tried to make those visits feel normal, I could see it in his eyes. I wasn't mommy anymore. I was someone he visited, a stranger in a place that wasn't home. I kept telling myself that one day things would get better, that I would rebuild, that I would find happiness again, just like Ryan had. But the difference between us was he had never been the one who needed to change. He had always been good, steady and loyal. I had been the one who ruined everything. And now I had to live with the consequences of my own choices. I saw pictures of him sometimes and saw how free he looked. And every time I wondered if he ever thought about me at all, if he ever missed me, if he ever regretted loving me in the first place. But deep down, I already knew the answer. He didn't look like a man who had lost something. He looked like a man who had escaped, and I was the only one left in the wreckage. I have no one to blame but myself. I thought I wanted more. I thought I deserved better. But the truth is, I already had the best thing in my life, and I destroyed it with my own hands. Ryan has moved on, and I'm left with nothing but regret. I don't know if I'll ever recover from this. I hope you guys don't ever turn out like me. Because I could tell you this for free, it sure as hell feels like hell right where I'm at right now. I don't know if I could ever cope with feeling this sort of way. There are many times in a day now that I try to feel numb, so that I can just not feel as much hurt and pain as I do, but it is almost impossible. I didn't even think it was possible to hurt even more as time passed by, but this does. It hurts so much, and even when I was trying not to think about it and close my eyes to sleep, hoping I'll be able to escape my reality, well, I end up having nightmares. One where my entire life is ruined, and I end up dying a lonely, poor, and sad woman who achieved nothing but ruins. And it scares me a lot because I know that I will probably end up ending like that. My future feels bleak, empty, and dark. My son will never live with me being active in his life. Ryan seems to have moved on, and everyone has moved on in the world. Everyone except me. I am stuck in my own head and wishing I could take everything back. Maybe I will still be married to Ryan and still be the mother to my child, and I wouldn't be in this mess. The craziest thing is that the person I cheated on Ryan with doesn't even care about me anymore. He didn't even care about me from the beginning. It was all in my head. I just wanted what was not missing, and now I've chased that to the end of my own life. Wish I had a time machine so maybe I could have just gone back in time and undo the wrongs I did. But I can't do that, now can I? I can't undo anything. I only have this emptiness and cold, dark pain promising a future ahead of me. My life has just ended. Well, goodbye and thanks.